Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show. We're back with another live show. We got Caveman here. I'm not sure if Ricky's joining or not today, but we might see him in a little bit. How you doing, man? It's been a while.
I know, dude. I haven't seen you since I was 27.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
For those of you that haven't already, make sure you wish Dan a happy birthday. It was a little bit right before Thanksgiving. Hopefully you had a good holiday. Hopefully everyone listening had a good holiday. But, you know, we're waiting for the Giants to kind of do some holiday shopping here. We're a couple days short of the winter meetings. I think they kick off on the 7th, which is Sunday. Mm-hmm. And from there, we'll, usually it starts to heat up a little bit. We've actually had a little more action this season, or this offseason, around the league, I should say. Not really with the Giants, but around the league, than it feels like in recent years. So maybe free agency will actually move a little faster than it has in the past. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, just no waiting for the big names to sign until March. That's all I ask for. You can push it back to like January if you want, but let's just have it done before spring.
Yeah. When pitchers and catchers report, if guys aren't signed, there's just something wrong about that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want press conferences happening at Scottsdale Stadium. I don't want this, this stuff again. Like, just get these guys in the building, have a normal offseason, and we'll see how it goes. But there's been kind of a bit of Giants news, at least. Some of it good, some of it bad. We'll kind of glance over the Johnson stuff. Y'all know how my thoughts are on the whole. They're not chasing Tatsuya Imai or any free agent pitcher for that might end up getting $100 million. It sounds like team, as you guys saw in the video a couple days ago. To me, it screams that the team is acting poorer than it is. Drives me nuts. Every year they do this, but there are still avenues to improve the roster. So we're going to kind of focus on that a little bit later. But quick, because Dan hasn't had his chance to talk about it. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's annoying. I feel like that's just the most blunt way I can say it. And I think you nailed it on your episode the other day. It's like, guys, you have money. You're in a large market. What are we doing? Like, they're trying to act like they're the Marlins. They're trying to act like they're the Pirates. Just some, super small market, low budget team. Dude, you own the entirety of Northern California. Like, come on. Let's be real with ourselves for a bit. But yeah, so I mean, Pavlovich basically came out today and reaffirmed what Baggerly had stated with the whole Tatsuya Imai news, which is, it's annoying because you have a organization that's wanted to dive into the Japanese market for the last several off seasons. You saw them go after obviously Ohtani and other big name players. Yeah, you got a franchise worth $4 billion. Come on. And now you have a potential star pitcher from Japan that's come out and basically said, hey, I want to beat the Dodgers. I want to take them down. And he's 27 years old. He's got a lot of, years left on that arm. All the signs are pointing to, hey, he will sign with San Francisco. And the Johnsons are like, nah, we're good, man. We need that money. We need that for Mission Rock. So it's annoying. That's the best way I can say it. On the flip side of it, though, it sounds like the trade market is going to be pretty active, especially during the upcoming winter meetings. And we all saw how much of a guru that Buster Posey is with trades. You saw him basically fleece Boston to get Rafael Devers out of nowhere, well before the trade deadline this past year. So there is some hope and optimism. I'm not going to be completely negative on, about the fact that, the Giants are seemingly unwilling to bring in talent as far as the free agent market is concerned, because we've seen what Buster can do with trades. And I'm hoping that he brings in, there's a couple guys that I know we're going to talk about later on in the show that will dive in more. But I'm hoping there's at least, one or two of them that he ends up reeling in that can ultimately, improve the team in a positive way. So that's just the best summary I can give you. It's annoying that you got a bunch of cheap bastards that are billionaires that won't, spend like they should to compete with their biggest rivals in their division. And what can you do?
Yeah. And I'll acknowledge the fact that it is entirely possible that the team did scout him high and they just go, we don't believe in this guy as especially at the price tag. That's their opinion. They're obviously entitled to that if that's how they truly feel about it. So I will acknowledge that, but at the same time, I think to me the more telling thing is going to be if the team just really doesn't do much with the payroll. And I'm not saying to spend money just to spend money. That's absolutely not what the team should do. They shouldn't be doing things that's going to put them behind the eight ball long term. But the reality is this is an extremely rich organization. They can afford to take more risks than most teams. The Reds, the Marlins, the Pirates, those teams can't afford to necessarily whiff on a guy that's making $20-25 million a year. Giants can. That's the reality. Yeah. Especially on a shorter deal, but they could withstand a long-term deal. That's a significant investment. It might be the case with Lee. I mean, I still liked what I saw, especially the last couple months, the adjustments he made, but there's a lot of questions. Is he worth $22 million? Remains to be seen. We'll find out hopefully this season, but the Giants can afford a deal like that to go sideways and not kill them, because the reality is, even if one deal goes really bad for them like that, you're still looking at a team that could put together a $175 million payroll easily with the rest of the roster. So yeah, if one goes bad, you still have a payroll that would be equivalent to like top half of the league. So to me, they're not poor. They can afford to go for these risks and take these chances. At some point, you've got to make some aggressive moves like that if you're going to go try and chase down the Dodgers. So I'll be a little more annoyed if they don't like add to the payroll at all. If they and maybe they do believe in I talked about him yesterday, Zach Gallen, or they go like the Merrill Kelly route, or they try and bring a couple guys in that are making 20 whatever $million a year on a very short-term deal. Maybe that's the route they go, and I'm not gonna bag on them too hard if that's their belief in how they can build the club up the way they want it. But yeah, I can't get behind it if our offseason consists of the bullpen being Sam Hench's type signings, which I like the signing. I praised that signing, but you can't just fill the bullpen with two or three guys that are rehabbing or coming off major injuries, or you're hoping can bounce back, and you're going, hey, we're going to add three dudes to the bullpen that are making $1.5 million each. Like you gotta get a little more known commodities there. And same thing with the rotation. I'm a big believer in a guy like Blade Tidwell. I like, I think McDonald showed some good things. If Birdsong can get his command back, he's got really good stuff. I like the young pitchers we have in the upper levels. Wisenhunt, forgot to mention him. Manassian mentioned him yesterday. I like these young pitchers. They need some work. Obviously, each of them has their own areas they need to improve in. And I'd love to see them get an opportunity, but it's really difficult to go into a season where you're going, yeah, we're just going to run two of these young kids out there every fifth day, as well as Landon Roop, who I'm a huge proponent of Landon Roop, but he's only thrown 109 innings as a career high. It's hard to just trust that he's going to last the whole season next season. We saw it this year where he had some issues pop up. The knee thing, I let that go. That was a freak thing, but he had some arm issues towards the end of the year. So it's hard. Hopefully we can see a vision more with the roster itself. I think we're seeing the vision with the coaching staff, and that's going to be the big positive that we're going to talk about here. They announced a couple more guys to the coaching staff, including today Jesse Chavez as the bullpen coach, which is a pretty interesting hire, 18-year MLB vet. been around the game a long time, has probably a ton of relationships with other players. Not sure how much that'll impact players coming here, but it'll be very interesting to see how he does in that role. The big one, obviously, was Ron Washington, who at the very least is going to be the infield coach, and he has been a known infield guru for decades now. I'm very excited to see the work that he puts in, especially with Casey Schmidt at second, Bryce Eldridge and Rafi Devers over at first. Really looking forward to seeing that. And I'm very curious to see if he's going to go coach third base. Manassian he didn't open or close the door on that one. He basically just said, we're still working out that kind of stuff, because they asked him in the interview if he would be back over at third base. And Manassian kind of just skirted the question, we're still working on it. So possible. They also announced, oh God, I can't think of his first name. Last name was Wonders, the assistant pitching coach they brought over from Tampa Bay. Christian Wonders. I think it was Christian Wonders. Yeah, I was drawing a blank. He's coming over. Apparently he's one of those big biomechanics guys. He's going to be your analytical pitching coach. Kind of they're bringing over to the staff to work with Massage and Frank Anderson. So I like the vision with the coaching staff. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of kind of forward thinking guys that they're bringing in from other orgs. That I think is a big win for this team so far this offseason is the coaching staff. I think the coaching staff, a lot of people don't want to hear this. And I totally get it, because it's way more fun to get players and the shiny new toys. But I genuinely think that this coaching staff, if they end up being as good as we're hoping, because they're unproven, that's the reality. But I think the coaching staff itself could actually be a pathway to more wins than any individual player. And this isn't me just trying to talk myself into being optimistic. It's just that team last season and the year before, I feel like finished with as few wins as they really should have. They got nothing. The coaching staff didn't squeeze any extra wins out of that team. So I'm hopeful that they'll at least get a little bit there, but they have got to start getting some players. You can't just ask these guys to polish a turd. That's the reality.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things to your point there. And I talked about it briefly on X, and I'm starting to get a little bit of hate from it. But it's if the organization was as focused on improving the roster as they are focused on improving the coaching staff, you got a World Series contender of a team. So that's kind of what's one of the bigger annoyances to me, is because especially after the last couple seasons, I mean, you've seen them make the splash signing and then extension with Matt Chapman. You've seen them bring in Willie Adames, largest contract in franchise history, bring in Rafi Devers. I mean, you got guys, a solid core that we've talked about for a while that are still in their prime, that you're looking at this roster from the outside looking in, and they're just a couple pieces away from being a legit playoff contention team. You get a solidified corner outfielder, you beef up the rotation, and maybe get a couple solid relievers in there. You've got a playoff team. So while you're adding to your coaching staff and getting all these names that are, definitely lifting some eyebrows and thinking, well, that's actually a pretty good move, why not just say, hey, we've got a core here that are locked down, that are still in their primes. We've got an upcoming superstar in Bryce Eldridge. We've got, a solid group on a daily basis. We're just a couple pieces away, and we've got the money. Money fell off the books after the season ended. We're only in about 160 on the payroll. Let's go ahead and make a run for the playoffs this season. That's just how I look at it as a fake fan, that doesn't know anything. You can definitely do both. It shouldn't be one or the other. You shouldn't just say, well, we're just going to go heavy on bringing in the coaching staff and try to work with what we got and just see what happens. No, dude, you obviously got glaring needs on your roster. You can do both, and you can still be under the threshold if you just want to break even or be under the CBT. You can do both. You can improve your team and you can improve your coaching staff. That's the biggest annoyance for me as a fan. So I really want to see that addressed, but on the, a positive note, I will agree with you. I'm a big fan of the staff that they're bringing in and that Tony Vitello's surrounding himself with. I think it's great to surround himself with, some of these advisors. You saw Javier Lopez be brought in as an advisor. You saw Kirk Casale be brought in as an advisor. You've got Ron Washington being brought in as an infield coach. You've obviously got Woda still around. You had Bochy that was just brought back a few weeks ago. Like, you're surrounding yourself with proven prior managers with experience and proven winners in general, which is something that I think is going to be super helpful for Vitello and both Buster and Maniason, as they kind of form that trio. You're surrounding yourself with the right types of guys that's gonna, kind of set you up for success. Just get some help on the roster, man. You don't have that many glaring holes. Just fill at least one or two of them and try to go and make a push for the playoffs. That's all I want, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think they're going to have to get a little bit creative. I kind of mentioned this in the text thread with you guys earlier, and I think one of the group chats, but it'll be really interesting to see kind of how they try and maybe be a little more flexible with how they address the roster. I know it's actually funny because it's going to be an unpopular opinion, I have a feeling, amongst Giants fans, but one of the names that we brought up, or that's been connected to the Giants a ton this year, has been Max Scherzer. And a lot of people talk about him like it's kind of like a foregone conclusion that he's going to go join Tony Vitello, which, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's a guarantee, because as much as he might be close to Tony, I think he wants to win. And I'm not sure he's going to look at the Giants and be like, oh yeah, that's a team that's ready to go compete for a championship. So maybe not. But Buster sold Justin Verlander last year. Maybe he sells Scherzer as well. We'll see. But I actually could see a guy like Scherzer being a decent fit. And hear me out, everybody. My idea there is he can't be the pitcher that you go get. Like, he can't be the main guy. You've got to go get another starting pitcher that you're putting into that 3, 2, 3, 4, whatever spot in the rotation. Like, you've got to get somebody that's better, whether that's Gallen, whether that's a trade for any number of guys that we're going to talk about later. Whether it's any of those things, I would be on board if you get one of those. And then I actually like the idea of Scherzer under one condition, and that is he needs to be willing to pitch out of the pen. And it could be all season, and it might not be any of the season. Like, I just need him to come in willing to come out of the pen. If he's willing to come out of the pen, I think it'd be a great signing, because to me, you can open. He struggled to make it to like 100 innings the last couple seasons. And if he's willing to go out of the pen, you can basically open up the fifth starter spot in spring training and go, all right, Tidwell, Wisenhunt, McDonald, Birdsong, and Scherzer. Y'all are competing for the fifth spot. And if one of the kids steps up and you can just insert them in, fantastic. That's like best case scenario, because Scherzer has shown he can still get outs when he's healthy.
Yeah.
And especially if guys are only seeing him like one time and he can keep his arm pretty fresh, I think he'd be a pretty decent weapon out of the pen, honestly. I'm not necessarily saying, hey, he's your closer, but like, he could be a decent leverage reliever, in my opinion, that eats up some innings. So, and if anything, he's a contingency at that point. So it kind of lets you try to turn it over to some of the young guys and see if you can start developing some of those guys, even at the major league level, and see if you can find something with one of those guys like you did with Landon Roop. And if not, you just roll a Scherzer and you go from there. But it's not a guy that you're going to have to commit to from day one, is kind of my idea there.
So I agree. And my thought process is, and I'm going to mention a guy that we're going to dive into a little bit more. But if you're not going to go, break the bank in free agency for a starting pitcher, and you go for a guy like you mentioned, a Zach Gallen or a Max Scherzer, which if they're coming in as like your 4 or 5, that's wonderful for me. If you can bring in one of those two guys and then go and make a trade for a guy like a Mackenzie Gore to slide in as your 3, while, like you mentioned, still having, Blade Tidwell, who can definitely slide into the rotation. Maybe Birdsong figures it out, it can slide up in there. Obviously, Landon Roop did a serviceable job. If you can get a rotation, consisting of guys like that, I would feel pretty confident in it. You know, you go in with a Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Mackenzie Gore, Zach Gallen, Leonard Roop, Blade Tidwell, you know, 6 guys like that, or swap out Gallen for Scherzer. I mean, if you can do something kind of like that, I would love it. So that's kind of like what my thought process is with that. I think you just have to get creative, plain and simply put. You got to get creative if you're not going to go and spend big in free agency, and you got to evaluate the trade market.
Yeah,
And thank
I
you for
agree
the.
with this, Aaron.
I was going to say thank you for the heads up, Jen. I will adjust that right now.
Yeah, I agree with that, Aaron. The fact that we're having to talk about getting creative, it's frustrating to say the least. But that just might be the reality of this offseason. You know, it's kind of hard to expect them to sign or acquire, 6 guys to fill every need on the roster. You're going to go into the season having to hope on, some young guys step up. And that might be the pen. That might be them going, okay, well, maybe a couple of these guys that don't win a starter spot can be decent out of the pen. Maybe it's Carson Seymour, maybe Wisenhunt is change up. Tidwell's stuff is absolutely nasty. And as much as I don't want to give up on him as a, I wouldn't really want to like take him out of a potential starter spot. That might be a guy that, especially with his sliders, is really effective in late innings. It might be Birdsong. We saw how good he could be in the pen last season. So that might be what they have to do. Like Dan said, you could go get a couple guys that you can kind of slot in. Gallen, I think, absolutely worst case is going to be your 4th starter. I mean, even last year, I broke it down on the video yesterday. Even last year, for as bad as the numbers on the surface look, he actually had a pretty productive season for a chunk of the year. Like the last 2 months, he was really good. He made, I think, 21 of his 33 starts. He went at least 6 innings. So at the very least, he was eating up innings. Also had, I think, 15 quality starts, which, yeah, you'd want those numbers to be way better. But I mean, that the reality is he's not, terrible. Like he's actually a very good starter. And a lot of the numbers indicate that he's going to bounce. He'll probably bounce back. Like, I think it's more likely he pitches more like the guy that he was, maybe not the guy that he was in I think it was 2022 when he had like a 0.9 whip and a 2.5 ERA. But I think it's more likely that he's going to pitch like the guy he was in 2023 and 2024 than he'll pitch like the guy in 25. Like, I think you're going to get closer to that version of Gallen if you do that. I don't think he's going to break the bank. I think you're looking at a 3 or 4 year deal and maybe 20 mil per. I think that's right in their wheelhouse if they're talking middle of the market pitchers. So it wouldn't be the most exciting move. I know a lot of people would look at the surface numbers last year and probably lose it, but I actually do think he would help this team quite a bit. And
Hey,
then,
sorry to cut you off. I don't want to be that guy, but Ponce was too expensive at 10 mil a year.
yeah. And someone brought this up earlier where they said, yeah, NorCal fan, it's not the dollars, it's the years. And there's probably a lot of truth to that. Now,
Probably.
Ponce, should they have been willing to give him a 3rd year? I would argue yes. But if this team can't afford a $10 million a year boo-boo for 3 years, then I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, they got Jordan Hicks, who was objectively terrible for much of his tenure, and they were able to off that deal. No problem. Rinse their hands of that. They had Ross Stripling, who had one of the worst Giants seasons in recent memory by a starter a couple of years ago. They got out of most of that deal and got a half decent prospect back in the process. They signed Mitch Haniger, who couldn't stay on the field, and when he was on the field, was awful. And DeSclafani, off both of those, and got a guy that, yeah, he was coming off Tommy John, but Robbie Ray had a really good season last year, was an all-star. Like, you can pivot off these deals when they're not absurd money or absurd years. So to me, it was just, I hate the fact that the fact that it got thrown out, that it was just too much for them, just pissed me off. But is what it is. Ken Rosenthal says 15 teams are in on Mackenzie Gore. Yeah, I mean,
No surprise.
You can turn off if you just didn't look at Mackenzie Gore's numbers and you just watched him throw like 1 inning. You can see why most of the league is in on him. I mean, the guy is absolutely filthy.
Yeah, he's got
But
disgusting stuff.
over the year and over the course of a game, like the command has some issues. Um, primarily, we'll dive in on that. Like, primarily like his curve and his change, he doesn't command very well. But the reality is if he made gains there, like you're looking at a guy that might leap from a 3 or 4 starter all the way up to like a 2. He can be really good if he just improves in a couple avenues. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see there. But yeah, we'll see what the team does. Winter meetings are coming. Usually it picks up a little bit. Hopefully we get some action. We'll talk about that. We're going to jump in on trade targets for the Giants. And this is going to be kind of a 2-part thing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through a bunch of guys. I wrote down, if Dan has anybody else he wants to add, he will. If anybody in the chat wants to add people that and get our thoughts, make sure you throw it in there. I wrote down, I don't know, probably 10, 15 names here. Some starting pitchers, some second basemen, some outfielders. Not necessarily every one of these guys are someone that I truly want. These are just kind of names that are said to be available at positions of need, or, arguably positions of need in some cases. So we're going to kind of talk about those. And then also, I'm going to dive in on the Giants farm system, because I feel like there's this misconception out there that all the Giants have to trade is Bryce Eldridge. And you see it on X and different social medias all the time, where every single pitcher, I swear, that comes available, they're like, all right, just package Bryce for this guy. It's like, okay, a lot of them, that's an overpay. Like, you're not trading Bryce Eldridge for Mitch Keller. Sorry for all of you that saw my post the other day on that. You know exactly my feelings on that. But the Giant, there's a lot of people that are out there going, that's their only tradable asset. That's just simply not true. So I'm going to beat that one down real fast. We're going to talk about the guys that are probably most likely in the system that would be used as trade pieces. I'll talk about there's one player I think above all others that actually is probably the most likely to get traded. Maybe you could argue 2, but there's one guy I think that is the most likely. And then we'll also talk about, like, are there any players that we would actually trade a Bryce Eldridge for, or like a Josh Gonzalez. So we'll go in kind of on those as well. But starting off with the starting pitchers. Now, do you have any favorites, Dan, of the starters? And I have all their contract situations and all that written down, so we all kind of know what the value is here.
I have 2 realistic favorites. I mean, obviously, if you get like a Scooble or a Green, you're going to be all over that. But realistically speaking, and you listed them as well, taking a look at your notes here. I briefly mentioned one, Mackenzie Gore. That would be an awesome player to bring in. And then Freddie Peralta. Those are the 2 that I would circle in a realistic standpoint if I could.
Yeah. Mackenzie Gore, I like that deal, especially depending on what you're getting or giving up. And I don't necessarily think he's going to cost you a top 100. Same thing with Freddie Peralta. And I know a lot of people are quick to point out, this guy finished 5th in Cy Young voting last year. He's going to cost a lot. And it's like, he's got 1 year left on his deal. Kyle Tucker, who, Tucker was making more money, and the money is a factor here where, Freddie's only making $8 million next season. I mean, he's criminally underpaid for the production he's given, relative to the market, because at the end of the day, $8 million is still a ton of money. But he's criminally underpaid for a guy that's as good as he is. So he probably does bump up his value a little bit. But like, you look at last season, Kyle Tucker got 1 top 100 prospect. Now, he got a productive big leaguer back in Paredes, but this is not going to cost you Bryce Eldridge. And frankly, I'm going to get in on Joshua. It shouldn't cost you Joshua either. You could maybe make a case that because of the cost and everything, it might cost you a top 100 guy. The Giants do have 3. They have Bryce Eldridge at 19. If this is off Baseball America's list, they have Joshua Gonzalez at 82, and they have Bo Davidson at 85. Maybe you bite the bullet and you sell off Bo Davidson in this case. I don't love that idea, but maybe that's what the cost is. And if that is the cost and you feel pretty good about getting an extension done, I'd probably be willing to at that point. but a lot really hinges on trying to get an extension done for me. So
Yeah, I think Ariel would beat your ass for bringing up Bo Davidson, but I mean, if there's an extension in hand, I think you have to strongly consider a deal like that.
yeah,
One of the reports or speculations that I saw, who was it? Was it somebody? Was it Rosenthal? No, somebody on X threw it out as like a trade suggestion for Gore, and it was Bresnahan and Wisenhunt, I believe.
I liked your reaction to that.
Yeah, my reaction was quote unquote, "You will have to pry Brezzy from my cold dead hands." I do not want to give up Bresnahan for anyone, to be quite frank. But Cody did make a good point. If you're going to do something like that and give up a whiz, maybe seeing if they take a Johnny Level, who's got
Yep.
very high upside. If you can maybe pull something off like that, Jim Bowden, thank you, Michael. If you can pull something off like that, that would be a package that I would actually strongly consider. But yeah, I think if you have the opportunity to get one of those two guys, either a Freddie Peralta or a Mackenzie Gore, and it can let you keep Joshua and Bryce, especially, and preferably Bo and Brezzy, I think you gotta pursue one of those opportunities, especially if you have a chance to lock them up long term.
Yeah, and that's where I think Brezzy and this is gonna sound I don't like talking about players like they're not human beings but the reality is the way I'm looking at prospects a lot of times is it's like stocks, and you don't want to sell a guy necessarily too early if you feel like he's truly an ascending player.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm going to use this for Joshua as a prime example. And yes, there's always a chance it crashes and the value tanks. But especially early on with a player like Joshua, he hasn't even played stateside yet. He's already talked about as like a top 100 guy. He's already had success. This is a guy that in 2 years could easily be a top 5 prospect in all of baseball.
Yeah.
And then you can start making the decision of, do I try and ride this one out and see if he can become a superstar here, or you put him in a package for an actual superstar player? Not, hey, let's go trade him for 2 years of Joe Ryan, who's probably more of like a number 2 starter at 29 years old. Like that to me, that feels like selling low on a prospect, or 1 year of Freddie Peralta. So that's where I don't like trading guys like that. And I actually view Bresnahan in a similar light. The national media is finally starting to figure out how good he is. Hence why he jumped, and you look at Baseball America's rankings, he jumped from the mid to lower teens. I think last year, when they first got him, he was probably in the low 20s. He gets in the mid teens. I think he was around 14 or 15. He's now their number 5 prospect on Baseball America, which the top 3 are top 100. The next 2, Level and Bresnahan, and maybe even Keener Martinez, if you want to go over to the third one, those are all guys that are like one good year away from being, like, not even one good year, like one half of a good year away from possibly jumping into those top 100 rankings as they're getting more exposure like in full season ball. So to me, I don't like selling low on those guys. Now that said, and Bresnahan in particular, being a lefty with really great, he has a great fastball, really good changeup, and he has a good slider shape that if he starts landing it, you're going to be talking about a guy with 3+ to plus pitches as a lefty. Like, that's incredibly valuable. So that's a guy I could really see skyrocketing up the ranking. So once again, like, we're talking about guys that I don't like selling when their stock is not as high as I feel like it's going to be very soon. But that said, you got to give up something to get something. So that's where I brought up Johnny Level, or Dan mentioned him. I brought him up in that tweet earlier. This is, and the rationale, and I'm going to just kind of skip ahead of here a little bit, where I said, who's the most likely guy to get dealt? And to me, it is Johnny Level. Michael says, when are the Giants set to sign Luis Hernandez? He's the number 1 prospect in this upcoming international draft that is got a agreement in place with the Giants. That's January 15th is signing day. And that ties into the Johnny Level thing. Right now, you look at the Giants system. Number one, you got Willie Adames locked in at shortstop for 6 more seasons. Yes, maybe he moves to second base eventually, but Johnny Level plays a position and up the middle where the Giants in their system currently have Joshua Gonzalez and their first round pick last season in Gavin Keelan. And they're set to sign the number one international prospect in this upcoming signing period. Yeah. To me, if you have a position where you could most afford to deal a guy, it's right there. And I do think Johnny Level's got a lot of upside. I actually think he is going to be a top 100 prospect once he has played an A-ball for most of the year. I think he's going to be a really good player, good hit tool, solid defender. Might have to move to second, but he's got a chance to stick it short. Plus speed, overall, like he's a really good player. But you got to give up something good to get something good. So to me, he's the guy that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to mention how the two positions that I think they can afford to deal. Well, yeah, I would say 3 really, but two that stand out are, like you said, shortstop. Johnny Level's got a lot of value. Starting pitching, as strange as that sounds, because the Giants struggled with starters last year, especially in the upper levels of the minors. You've got a lot of arms that you can move off of. And then outfield. I think you have a lot of middle tier outfielders, couple that are rising as far as the system is concerned, but it's definitely kind of a crowded bunch. I think those are the 3 positions you can look at the deal. Then from there, it really just comes down to 2 factors, like you said. One, long term, as far as what the organization looks like you just touched on with the shortstop position, how it's, if all goes to plan, that's position's pretty much booked for the next 15, 20 years.
Hopefully.
But I mean, obviously anything can happen. We saw what happened with Marco Luciano today. It's a shame it happens. We're not going to dive in on that, but no, I think you have to look into factors such as that, as well as just maximizing overall value. Like you said, with Johnny Level in particular, he's a guy that, like Cody said, who is towards the top as far as the Giants prospects are concerned, and can definitely knock on the top 100 within the next year. If you have a chance to include him in a package deal to get a bona fide top of the line starting pitcher, I think you have to absolutely be all over that.
Yeah. And I think he could be the centerpiece. Kind of, well, a lot of teams are going to want guys that are closer to the majors for sure.
That's why I say if you package him with a guy like a guy like Wiz, for example.
Exactly. And whether it's Wiz and Hunt, Tidwell, Birdsong, whatever, like there are guys that are, I pretty much am open. And I have this list of like guys I think that would make a lot of sense to deal. One of them says all upper level young arms other than Roop.
Yeah.
Basically, they're fair game. And it's not that I don't like a lot of these guys. It's just, if you're trying to plug in a starter, they've got to be on the table. Yeah. And then they've got 4 guys down in the lower levels in particular that are pretty highly ranked, highly rated, really highly viewed. And that's, Bresnahan, Argenis Kayama, Keener Martinez, and Luis De La Torre. Mm-hmm. Those are 4 arms that are really very highly viewed around the game. So I could see any of those guys potentially being on the table for the right package. Although, as we've mentioned, we don't really want to see Brezzy go. That's for sure. And then I put kind of Bo or Dakota. I think with the 2 of them, and then with them getting Cohen, wouldn't shock me if one of those guys ends up being kind of on the table. In a deal, especially it would hurt.
Yeah, I really don't want to give up Dakota. I just think his tools are electric.
Oh, 100%.
It would hurt to see him turn into a, somebody's top prospect or a potential star outfielder.
And I think Bo is more likely just because of his value.
For sure.
Until Dakota proves it at high A or double A, teams are going to be skeptical, especially around his hit tool. So yeah. I think Bo clearly has a higher value. And as I said, with stocks, like, Bo is, and as much as this pains me to say this, Bo is probably at a possible high point as far as it comes to prospect value right now.
For sure.
If you look at the players and you go, who's more likely to gain value and who's more likely to lose value, Bo is realistically a guy that's probably more likely to lose value than gain going into next season. Now, that said, if he shows up and he hits in Double A like he did in High A last season, I mean, it might just be on. Like, you might look at yeah, this guy's a stud. But it's just that's the reality of prospect value and how it kind of ebbs and flows. So, we'll kind of see there. But now a bunch of other names that we kind of had written down. He mentioned Hunter Green. We said, what would it take to get Bryce or Joshua for us really to be willing to put one of them in a deal? My stipulation is has to be a genuine ace, has to have at least 3 years of club control.
Yep.
That's Hunter Green's got 4 years at a nice, 3 years and a club option at $61 million. And the club option is $21 million of that in year 4. So the first 3 years are 3 years, $40 million. If the Reds are crazy enough to trade him, and I don't think they are at the end of the day, but if they are crazy enough to trade him, you should 100% be dangling Bryce Eldridge in front of the Reds. I don't care about his injury history. I know it exists. That is a ace caliber pitcher when he's healthy and on the mound.
I mean, he destroyed us last year. We saw that firsthand. Couldn't hit that guy. Yeah, I mean, if you're able to get a Hunter Green, or as crazy as it's going to sound, if Pittsburgh says, all right, we'll move Paul Skeens, I'm absolutely going to dangle Bryce Eldridge. But I am not going to do it for a Joe Ryan type of guy. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, 100%. And Joe Ryan's teammate, Pablo Lopez, that's another guy out there, 2 years, 43 and a half. Not as team friendly as some of the other ones. But still probably an under market value for what he's given performance wise. Don't think that that's necessarily a guy they're going to end up going for, although because of the money, it might not cost quite as much. A guy that when he pitched against the Giants, that opened my eyes. It was in San Francisco, and I went, who is this guy that looks like a guy that's throwing 100 miles an hour? He looks like Greg Maddux if Greg Maddux threw 100 miles an hour. And that's Edward Cabrera on the Marlins. I don't know for anybody that remembered that start, but this guy was dotting like 92 mile an hour splitters, 93 mile an hour sliders, and like 100 mile an hour sinker all on both sides of the plate. And he was just hitting his spots for 6 innings or so. It was disgusting. And if the Marlins are crazy enough to trade this guy, and his value probably isn't as high as people would think because he has had a lot of inconsistencies early on in his career. He seemed to figure something out last year, still finished with like a 3.5 ERA. If he is available, I would 100%, I would be all over that trying to get that guy here because that guy has some of the nastiest stuff in Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you can get creative with someone like that, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just going through some of these comments here. Where did Baseball America have Bo ranked? 85?
85.
So, to your question, NorCal Fan 11, yes.
Yeah,
he is.
At least according to that publisher. He is. I think Fangraphs might have him in there. I'm not 100%. I know MLB Pipeline does not. I've always, and this is not just like, hey, to prove my point, but I've just always been biased towards Baseball America. I feel like overall they do a better job. Yeah. You look on MLB Pipeline and they still have Rainer Arias as like the 8th ranked prospect in the Giant system. Kind of says all you need to know right now. And I don't hate Rainer. It's just there's no chance in heck that he's top 10 prospect on the Giant system right now. So,
and then let me go through a couple more that I start here.
Delay.
DJ Delay asks, do you think with the Twins holding on to Ryan, it's an even bigger need now more than ever the Giants re-enter the EMI sweepstakes? Honestly, I don't see them re-entering the EMI sweepstakes for any reason. I mean, they've made it clear, and two of the most, say what you want about them, but two of the most reputable sources in the organization with Baggerly and Pavlovich all but confirmed that he's going to be out of their price range. So with the Twins holding on to Ryan, supposedly it could just be smoke, But I think the Giants are pivoting as we speak to the trade market, and the guys like the Zach Gallons, for example. I think that's kind of where they're prioritizing their focus on.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Also, I don't believe for one moment that the Twins are actually holding on to them.
I don't buy it. I think it's just trying to play hardball.
Yeah. I tweeted it out today after I saw that of this reeks of what you hear and what gets leaked every year before dudes start getting traded.
Yeah, exactly.
The Astros GM last season was like adamant, we're not trading Tucker. This is our guy. We're going to try and win with him this year. We believe in him. We want him here long, blah, blah, blah. A week and a half later, the dude was a Cub. Like, This happens every year. There is no benefit for these guys to tell the truth. There's no benefit for them to show their cards. If anything, it's to their benefit to tell teams like, oh, no, we really don't want to trade him. We're going to hold on to him, because then it at least will make teams consider like maybe they will, and we got to sweeten the pot to get the part with this guy. It's just kind of a basic negotiating tactic at that point. So
it's all smoke and mirrors. Yeah. It's all smoke and mirrors. Let me see a couple more I want to get here. I'm
not touching on that last one.
No, but I'm gonna laugh at it. Yeah. So who you want to give Eldridge up for? I mentioned it earlier. As far as me personally, I can't speak on behalf of Cody, but Hunter Green or Paul Skeens. Simply put, I don't want to flip Eldridge for scraps.
And I would say Scooble if there's an extension agreed upon in hand. But as I said the other day, if the Giants are unwilling to go hand a starting pitcher $100 million in free agency, what makes us think that they are going to turn around, trade for a guy, and then go, here's $120 million. Here's a big enough offer to get you to bypass free agency if they're 1 year away. As much as we all love the idea of Tariq Skubal, are they really going to sit there and go, all right, here's $400 million so you can skip free agency? Because I don't believe that for 1 second that they will. So I will just go ahead and rule that one out now that they will trade Bryce Eldridge for him.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree, Delay. That's why I'm saying it has to have an extension in hand. There needs to be a pre-agreed upon extension, and that needs to be like, hey, you passed your physical, the trade goes through, cool, you're on the dotted line. We got you extended. That's the only way I do that.
So I want to cover this. There's two questions, but they kind of go hand in hand together. The first one was Jason, who says, what did they expect Imai was going to go for? I feel like he was always at the 100 mil range. And then NorCal came in and said, Giants public or be going public saying they're not going after big money, case be a case of smoke and mirrors. So a couple things to this point. I did quite a bit of homework on Imai once the offseason ended and the speculation was that he was going to get posted. And there is a wide range of speculation as far as what his price tag was going to go for. I saw so-called experts say as low as 75 mil and others say surpassing 200 plus. And I think this is just my speculation. I think the Giants were kind of hoping he would be between that 75 to 120 mil range. And if that's where his market was going to end up falling into, then they were going to be heavily involved. Once the, rumors started coming out, the speculation, and ultimately his price tag started coming out where he's going to be approaching, if not surpassing 200 mil, that's when I think the Giants decided they're going to back off a little bit. So to NorCal's point, could they be saying they're not going after big money guys to be smoke and mirrors? Absolutely. I mean, they could absolutely be saying that and then come out of nowhere. We saw this with the team over the last couple of years, like Cody mentioned in his prior shows, where, they said, we're done spending. We're not spending anymore. Okay, we're going to go and get Soler. We're not going to go spend anymore. Okay, we're going to get Snell. Okay, we're done. Okay, we're going to get Chapman. I mean, you saw them kind of say one thing and then do the complete opposite. It's not completely unheard of with this organization, but I think, going based off of Jason's point with a combination of this, it's a little bit of both. I think they will spend to an extent. I just feel like based off of the initial reports and speculation as far as what EMI was going to cost, prior to the offseason compared to where it is now, that market is definitely inflated. And I think that ultimately just kind of made the Giants, back off a little bit.
Hey, if Greg Johnson thinks that the ROI on a player is going to be really good, they'll spend.
Yeah.
And by return on investment, I'm not talking about quality of the play.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And then I want to answer this one from Dan really quick. He says, guys, do you think a signing is imminent with the relief of Luciano today to make room on the 40? I think there's something coming within the next 24 to 48 hours because of the timing of waiving Luciano. I think it's going to be one or two things, Dan. One, like you said, yeah, sure. Could there be a signing that's imminent and they wanted to make some room? Yeah. But on the flip side of that, you also have the Rule 5 draft coming up.
Just going to pull this.
And yeah, and I think there's potentially somebody that's going to be available that they may want to pounce on.
Yeah. Especially given their bullpen situation, it wouldn't shock me if there's a couple arms that they've got their eye on.
Agreed.
Those are usually the most common guys.
So, do I think they're going to bring somebody in? Absolutely. Whether it's going to be a free agency signing or a Rule 5 draft signing, it's going to be one or the other. Yeah. I would like to bring in Susak.
Yeah. They might, in realities, they might have just, they know they're going to acquire players at some point. Yeah. So it might just be, we're going to rip the Band-Aid off, let this guy go find a home somewhere else. Where and it ended up being Pittsburgh. That just might be the reality. They were just like, we know he's not in our future. We're not going to try and bring him to camp and eat up a 40-man spot and blah blah blah. They might have just been like, whatever, we're just going to do it now and move on. That could just be the reality.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with Real Nature Guy's question. What do they do with Encarnacion, Matos, and McRae? I think at least two of those three guys are gone, to be quite frank with you. I think they probably keep McRae for another year. I think they like exactly. He's got an option. I think they like his defensive ability. They like his arm. They like his speed. I think they keep him, but I can ultimately see Harar leaving. I don't see him on the team next year. And Matos, in my opinion, is probably 50-50. I don't think they're going to give him the chance.
As of right now, they don't have the roster in place to just waive Luis Matos.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if they acquire another right fielder, that might just become like, okay, time to move on. But as of right now, where your other guy, his competition currently is, because I can't take McRae seriously until the strikeouts get way lower as a potential starter. When Matos' competition right now is Gilbert and Weimer, Weimer, I don't know. You got to at least bring him to camp and see if he just thoroughly outplays those guys.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of offseason to go, so they might still acquire something. They might trade him. You just don't know. But I think he's a guy that they're not going to just cut. They're not going to just waive like they did with Luciano. Luciano, they knew there was no pathway for Luciano.
Nope.
He's behind far too many guys. And he's behind guys that might not, like as Dan mentioned, he's behind guys that might not even be here next year. Like he was behind everybody. So he's behind Wade Meckler. Like the guy's behind everybody. So it's just as far as 40-man outfielders go. So it was happening. It was good. It's just the reality. And yeah, it's sad they couldn't get anything for him, but that's just the reality of his prospect value right now.
Yeah.
We could compare him to Joey Bart, but the reality is Joey Bart had proven a hell of a lot more than Marco Luciano did when Bart got waived and Pittsburgh grabbed him. So that's why they were able to trade him for, Austin Strickland at least. They got something for him.
Yeah.
Luciano doesn't have any value really, unfortunately, at this point.
Agreed. Agreed. Real quick, delay. I would love to bring in Susak, but it does sound like they are confident with Rodriguez being the backup next year. Yeah.
I like Rodriguez, man. He can hit.
He can.
And I'm excited to see what he can do. His defense, it's a work in progress. I saw some good things though. He looked pretty decent as a receiver. In this couple games I saw him catch, he was dealing with like a shoulder injury when he first came over, so he just DH'd initially, but We'll see. I'm going to move on to a couple other people. I'm going to kind of rip through the second baseman. These were the three names that I saw get floated. One of them, it's more media driven. I keep seeing like more Cubs guys coming out going, "What are you? If you lost your mind?" And that's Nico Horner. I'd love to get Nico Horner back here, but I don't think he's getting traded. I think the Cubs are a good enough team that they're going to try and ride it out and see if they can win. With him on the roster, it kind of doesn't make a ton of sense for them to move him yet. Brandon Lowe is another one that got floated out there. He's got 1 year, $11.5 million left. I don't like the idea of making a move for him. I don't think defensively he's a significant downgrade from Casey. Doesn't move great. I like the bat, but I don't really like the fit necessarily, especially when you're trying to really work on defense. Although, hey, maybe Ron Washington can work some magic and make him a decent defender. But I don't really like that fit. I don't think he's enough of an upgrade overall on Casey, especially playing as a lefty in Oracle. Yeah. The other guy that is really popular, but the cost could be significant. Though, as I've kind of mentioned in the past, I think Casey would be part of the deal that goes back, is Brendan Donovan. I think he's the only guy that reasonably might be available that, and Casey, if you're listening, I'm sorry, man, but I think he's the only guy that I would probably be willing to move on this season for. Like, I don't see upgrades out there currently at second base other than a guy like Brendan Donovan. But
yeah.
Any thoughts there before we kick over to the outfield?
No, I mean, my opinion on my thoughts on Brandon Donovan. I think if you can bring him in, you have to, realistically. But like we mentioned, there's no clear indefinite upgrade over Casey, in my opinion, and much to yours as well. But if you can get down to Donovan, that's an obvious one that you can't really pass up. So that's what I would do. I'm cool off Harrison Bader. That some of the people in the chat are saying I'm cool off that. Outfield, I mean, a lot of fans are big on Stephen Kwan. If you can maybe try to, get him in, I'm not sure what his cost would be as far as what you'd have to give up. That's TBD. I've heard Jaron Duran's name get mentioned quite a bit. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Bash those Giants.
Yeah. I've heard Jaron Duran get mentioned and thrown out a lot. I still think he might be a little bit pricey. And then Wilyer Abreu, he's got a very team-friendly deal. Yeah. And he can hit. And I made the joke to Cody and Ricky the other day. I was like, only reason I'm hesitant on bringing in Wilyer is because he sounds too much like Wilmer. But I can look past it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to Donovan for a second. I'm going to jump over to the guys you just mentioned. As far as package goes for Donovan, this is my best guess. Okay. I do think you're going to have to look at Bo. I think it's going to require a top 100 to get Brendan. There's going to be too many guys. I think you're looking at like a Bo. I think you're looking at Casey because I do think I think that Arenado is going to waive his no trade at some point and get dealt. So I think it would make sense for St. Louis to go, hey, let's bring Casey back. He can play third. So that is going to help with some of the value. And then I do think you're looking at probably a pitcher, one of the guys in the upper levels. It's going to be this is a guy that hits 280 with like an 800 plus OPS, and he's a plus defender at second baseman. Brendan Donovan legitimately might be like a top 5 second baseman in baseball.
Oh, for sure.
He's really damn good. So it's not going to be cheap. And he's got 2 years. He's projected to make like $5.5 million next season. He's ARB 2. He'll go ARB 3. Maybe you try and extend him. I don't know what the team does there, but he's going to cost a pretty penny with 2 years at an inexpensive cost. But he's actually an upgrade there, I think, as of right now. Outfield, Stephen Kwan has got 2 years left. A lot of people talk about putting Ramos in that deal back. I can't really get behind trading Elliot Ramos right now when we don't have a right fielder. Like, I know Kwan has played left field a lot, but I feel like shouldn't the idea be to try and get both of those guys in the lineup? You look at, I mean, we're gonna have a better defender, a better base runner, and as far as offensive value, I think it's gonna be pretty close to equal, just a different profile. But you put him in left field, and it's like, great, we got a new left fielder that we maybe slightly upgraded. we still have a hole in right field. Like, it doesn't solve really anything. It just kind of ups your floor slightly in left field. So I don't love that idea unless you're going to, maybe he can play right. I mean, I think there's no reason he couldn't, but who knows? He's got plenty of arm, that's for sure. Other players, he mentioned Duran. That's a little bit of a tricky one. I really liked him like a year ago, would have done that deal. Dan will be hopping back in here in a second. I would definitely consider Wilyer Abreu. I think that's probably my favorite option that's out there. That's a guy that does play right field plus defender, one of the better defenders. I think he was a Gold Glove finalist this year, or he's kind of like trending that direction of being like a Gold Glove caliber defender, right field, big arm, really good player there, can hit, has some pop, doesn't strike out a ton. Like, there's a lot to love about that profile. He's pre-arbitration. He still has 4 years of control. That's a guy that I really like. I know Boston wants pitching, more pitching. That's kind of the deal with Boston. So it would be interesting to see kind of what that package coming back would look like. But that's definitely a guy that I could see the team looking at. Yeah, Gold Glove winner this year. Cool. Thank you, D-Lay. I could not remember who. Shows how closely I looked at who won the Gold Gloves in the American League. But yeah, I mean, he's a great defender. That's a guy that 100% upgrades the outfield, and you could put him out there. You'd feel at least decent, I think, at, you feel really good about your right fielder, which in that park's important. Hopefully Lee needs to improve. Hopefully Ramos can get back closer to average defensively. And, that would actually upgrade your roster quite a bit. And yeah, and I agree with Mark here. Getting rid of Ramos already for a team that is old after 2 years, I don't get it. And you know what? I sat here and I said, end of the year, countless times, that I don't want to see Ramos go until he gets coaches that'll hold him accountable. And Ron Washington, for all of his prowess as an infield guru, is an excellent base running coach. And I don't know if he's going to be the main guy as the base running coach, but he has a history of being, of preaching strong, fundamental, aggressive base running. And if anybody can fix Elliot Ramos on the bases, it's Ron Washington. So sorry, if I have no more excuses. Go get the guy, get a good outfield coach. And if Ramos still stinks it up in the outfield on the bases, and I think with good coaching, you can fix a lot of those issues, then fine, by all means, at the deadline, go ship him off somewhere. But give the dude a chance, because the bat is valuable. If he's at least, if he's at least closer to average on the bases and in the outfield, you're probably looking at like a 3+ WAR player at the end of the year, which for a guy that's pre-arbitration is a great value. And a middle of the order bat, which the team needs. So
yeah, just no more whatever the hell that was on defense. Just no more of that.
just stop it, Elliot. All of it.
Yeah, all of it. I mean, if that, like you said, if that can get improved, then by all means, the bat speaks for itself.
Have you tried putting the glove on your right hand?
Have you tried catching the ball? See ball, catch ball. Not see ball, kick ball, fall ball. Just go ahead and catch it.
Yeah.
Some of those miscues were just weird, man.
I don't get it, man. Like, some of it were just, it left me speechless at times.
A lot of it looked like when I was in my early 20s and would get, a few drinks in me and go play some men's league softball and just look the part. That's what a lot of it was like.
I think they should consider attaching like a GoPro to his head. But you just watch the
you can just see the first step going 3 steps to the left, 1 step backwards, then full sprint, then a dive.
Go to the film room. All right, pause. Elliot, see, this is where you went wrong. you took a step in, and the ball was actually 30 feet over your head. Oh God.
I don't know, man.
Craig Hammer, Ron Washington, even at his current advanced age, would be better than Ramos on the bases right now. Probably
not wrong, man.
Have you watched the? Since we're talking about, since you brought up Ron Washington, have you seen like some of the videos going around from like Washington, especially when he was with the Braves a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
He was working with like Ozzie Albies, and he's got that the mitt that's like I don't know what they call the mitt, but it's got like no give, and it's like and Albies is doing it, and he missed a couple, and he's like, nope, you're too late. And he goes, here's how it's supposed to be done. And he like, you toss it to me, and he walks over there, and he's just like so smooth picking some of them.
Super
and
smooth.
Like, this dude's like 65 years old, and he's still picking it out well. It's crazy, man. Yes, it's incredibly
hard.
If anything, we're gonna that GIF is gonna get incredibly overused.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with it. Oh man. All right. I don't think I had any other really notes as far as the trades go. Does anybody in the chat have any other people they want to talk about here? Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this thing up in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I know. Rajesh asked earlier how we couldn't get a single A pitcher for Marco and just let him go for free. Honestly, just kind of malpractice. They should have flipped him a couple years ago when he had value. And I believe if you go back 2 years ago on our live shows, we probably talked about that a couple of times. How they should look to move him for XYZ reasons. And ultimately, he was waived for those XYZ reasons. And you got nothing for a former top 100 prospect. So just, malpractice of development. I mean, people can say what they want about, Luciano not being good, quote unquote, but realistically, he was good at one point. He did have value at one point. He just wasn't developed, and you lost out on an opportunity to get something pretty valuable for him.
Yeah, the time to trade him was about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And as soon as they didn't do that, and he had some of the back injuries, other injuries, missed time, couldn't make contact consistently, like that's when the value starts slipping pretty quick. And I know it can be a cautionary tale for a guy like Joshua Gonzalez, who I was just sitting here saying, I think he's on the upswing, and he's going to be worth a ton more in about a year or two. It's a cautionary tale. But now that said, you look at Joshua, defense is not his problem. Speed's not his problem. Super twitchy, good bat to ball skills. Very advanced in a lot of regards, but also very raw, where like his bat, his power is still developing, his body's still maturing. Like it'll be interesting to see what happens, but to kind of Luciano's pathway, I think Joshua is going to at least have similar success early on, and that's going to help carry his value. Now, what he does in the upper levels, that might be where you're going to have to make that decision eventually, like they had to with Luciano, where they're going to have to decide, do we trade this guy or keep him? And I think Luciano, there were more holes in his game. You're not talking about a 5-tool guy when you talk about Luciano. You were talking about kind of a 2-tool guy, big raw power, incredible bat speed, and a big arm. Unfortunately, didn't always know where the throws were going, and couldn't really hit the ball. And any athleticism he did have kind of got sapped by the injuries. Yeah. But yeah, I just it's tough. And I also see people bringing up Marco all the time with like Bryce, where they're like, "Oh, we kept we kept Marco, and look how that worked out." And my answer to that is Bryce Eldridge at 20 years old in AAA just had a better season and between AA and AAA at 20 years old had a better season than Marco's had at any point in his career. Yeah. So I don't think we're comparing the same things here right now. So we'll see though. Time will tell.
Yeah, for sure. Just shame how that all worked out. Couple last ones here. NorCal says, will the A's trade Cervino? I mean, maybe. I don't think it's a really good fit with them, but at the same time, I don't know if I could see them trading him after just 1 year into that deal. But like we talked about earlier, I mean, you can pretty much get out of any deal if the package is right. So
Yeah.
could they? Maybe. Should we be interested? I'm cool off that personally.
Yeah. I I mean, if you can get him for a ham sandwich, then maybe.
Yeah.
But
If they'll take Wade Meckler for him, sign me up.
yeah, I mean, it might be a situation where if you just take the contract, they just kind of give him away.
Exactly.
But yeah. To answer really quick before we jump to, I know you have a couple flagged. Mark said, "Why would the Red Sox trade Duran? They are incredibly crowded in the outfield."
Yeah.
So they have. That's why. I mean, I think the better question is why would they trade Abreu? He's
Yeah.
cheaper and he's got more team control. But if they're crazy enough to do it, then we'll see. A few others. I'll let you just pull up the chats.
I'm just gonna go down the line here. Delay asks, I don't think I was here for the Schwarber talk. Was there any talk on it? We haven't talked about it. I did on X. If you want to check it out at KMandan EYD. Personally speaking, it only makes sense on the condition that you get a perennial ace in return for Bryce Eldridge. I'm not going to flip Eldridge for scraps and then pay 25 mil plus per year for a 33-year-old Kyle Schwarber. If you're getting, like I mentioned, nothing that's of equal or greater value for Bryce Eldridge. And that's basically where I'm at with it. If you're able to get a Hunter Green and for Bryce and you can lock down Schwarber for, a few years at 25 mil and you're going absolutely all in, sure, sign me up. But if you're flipping Bryce for a middle end starter and really just not that worth it, like I'm cool off of it personally.
Yeah, I'm not in the business of handing 25 plus mil over 5 years to a 33-year-old DH. I think that's just bad business.
No.
My personal opinion on that. Not when you already have multiple players on your roster that are questionable defensively with like Elliot Ramos and Rafi Devers.
Yeah, exactly.
At their positions. So I don't like that personally, but that's me. And yes, Mark, my goodness, Bryson Cincinnati.
Yeah, no kidding. Also want to touch on Mark's comment here. Yes, are you guys doing breaking news lives if the Giants sign anyone? Maybe. To be quite frank and quite honest with you guys, I just started a new job and am running on literal fumes as we speak. Ricky's going through a transition with his job. Cody's basically taken on 80% of the work at his job. Our personal lives away from here are kind of chaotic, and then I'm going to be stepping away from the show for probably like a week or two later in the month as I deal with some personal stuff. So we're going to do our best, but can't make any promises, at least me personally. Hopefully if Cody or Ricky's able to, they can step in.
Yeah, oftentimes if I can, we'll hop on that night. We're not going to be like hopping on 5 minutes after it breaks. I got a kid that's 2. Can't really pull that one off usually. There, I will say there is like 10 days at the end of December, kind of split up between 2 weeks that I'm going to be home alone. So, maybe if it happens then I might be able to just hop right in to a live show. But yeah, it just depends. We'll try to do it same day or like within a day, though, if any moves happen.
Yeah, for sure. Usually we try to be on top of it though.
Yeah.
Like you said, at least the night of. Like when the Vitello hiring happened, we went live that night and stuff like that. We'll miss you, Dan. I'll miss you, Jen. I'll miss all of you. It'll just be like 2 shows though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be out living in SF for a while. Honestly, hope works show for us. Yeah. Once the winter meetings end, we'll definitely have a show to
appreciate you,
summarize it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping the summary isn't, hey, that was a very jam-packed winter meetings. These teams all did this, and the Giants did nothing.
Yeah, I hope I'm not.
I really don't want that to be our show.
Hope I'm not drinking Jack on the Rocks that night.
Yeah. Michael, what's the chances of the Giants making a big splash at winter meetings? I wouldn't say it's great that it's going to be a big splash.
If
You know,
it depends on your interpretation of a big splash. If you're talking just astronomical, gigantic splash, shocking the world, I have
Kyle
better.
Tucker.
Yeah,
Go.
I have a better chance at landing a date with Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, pretty much.
Best way I can put it.
If you view Zach Gallen as a big splash, then yeah, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe like 20%, 25%. I could see it. I wouldn't be shocked if they make a big move. It might be a trade. You know, like we talked a ton about trade guys.
The trade market is heating up right now, apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of options there. And I mean, I could really, depending on the offers that are out there, but I could really see a guy like Freddie Peralta, the Giants being like super aggressive there. If the Brewers are going to deal him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just,
and
I mean, I would view that as a pretty damn big splash. I mean, honestly, but it's hard. As far as in free agency, I would say not great. I think there's probably a better chance of a big splash via trade. But yeah, it depends on what your definition is.
And on the topic of Freddie Peralta, shout out to Ricky, man. He pulled that name like 3-4 months ago on the show.
Last offseason, man.
Yeah.
He was all over Fred. No, Ricky did. He was all over Freddie last offseason, man.
He's been a Freddie Peralta stand for a while, and now like it's heating up that he might get moved. I'm like, dang, Ricky called that a while ago. Is Peralta a 2 or 3? He'd arguably be the 1. I'll be honest. I mean, realistically, they'll keep Logan as the 1, so he'd probably slide into the 2. But he's got the stuff to be a 1.
All right. I have the way I put it a lot of times with these guys, and this is the same way I view Logan Webb, and I think Freddie Peralta is in this category as well. It's kind of like starting quarterbacks in the NFL and stuff like that. But like, if you look at the top 30 starting pitchers in baseball, Logan Webb and Freddie Peralta are, in my opinion, both absolutely on that list. So kind of by default, they're number 1 starters if we're just comparing them relative to Major League Baseball. Now, in a perfect world, in a playoff series, are either of those guys your number 1? Probably not. You want a true ace, and the reality is there's not 30 aces out there. There's like 10 or 15 maybe. You know, we're talking like the Scoobles, the Skeens, the Greens, the Garrett Crochets, the Yamamotos, the Snell when he's healthy and pitching occasionally. Those are the guys that are like true aces, and there's not many of them. So he would probably slot in as the 2, but it's hard. I think we miscast a lot of guys as number 2s or number 3s just because we don't view them as like one of the top 10 pitchers in baseball, when I think he's a top 30 pitcher, if that makes sense. So.
Well put. That's what I'll say of that. Well put.
I think both him and Webb, you would like to be a number 2 though, or be your number 2, not a number 2, but your number 2.
Yeah.
In a perfect world. So kind of my thoughts there. I think he would help this staff a ton though. If you do go to a playoff series and you have Logan Webb and Freddie Peralta and Robbie Ray and Landon Roop, you at least are feeling like, hey, we're 4 deep and we got 4 guys that'll give us a chance to win. And I think you feel good there, at least.
Agreed. Would a Peralta trade work with a Gallen free agency signing?
I mean, good. They can afford both.
Yeah.
Be like $28 million between the 2.
That'd be a pretty successful offseason, in my opinion.
Yeah. Then just find at least a reliever, and you might be figuring out the offense a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you could certainly do it. But yeah, I think that's a good point here to stop today. Someone brought up King. I like him as well. I like him probably more than Gallen, that's for sure. But I like Gallen a lot. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think he's as bad as a lot of people make it out. I think, and if you guys want my full breakdown on like what I saw with him, check out the yesterday's video.
Yeah.
But we'll see. But appreciate everyone hopping in here today. If we have any news, if we are able to, as we mentioned, we will try and hop on. Other than that, we are going to be back probably. Well, I don't know when are you going, Dan? When are you stepping away?
It'll probably be my last show for the year. Will probably be the Bravo interview.
Okay, that's the following Monday, right?
Yeah. So I'll be here next Friday and Monday.
Okay, which means I need to figure out someone for Monday.
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah. All right, JC and Chuck, what y'all doing?
Tell JC to not be sick anymore.
Yeah. Man.
I'm hyped for the Bravo one though. That'll be fun. Too. He's a really cool guy.
That'll be a fun one. We got a couple good ones. For those of you that know Dason Crows, the guy they got from Aruba, kind of signed off the street. I think he was going to go play in like the Mexican league or something like that, and then they signed him, and he tore through the minor leagues last season. He finished in AAA. We're working on getting him on.
Dude, every time you say Aruba, I just think of Aruba, Jamaica, baby.
He's gonna get us copyrighted over here.
Imagine. But yeah, working on that one. And then for you guys that know Damian Bravo, super cool guy. I've been chatting it up with him for a couple months now. He's the homie. We got him locked in for the 15th, so he'll be on and chat up with us. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I think that's all I got. And then I'll be out until probably through the new year, and then I will be back.
Yeah. And I'm working on, just so you guys know, I'm working on a couple collabs in the later part of the month. So we'll have a couple shows that we're going to be doing with a few people. So check that out. Appreciate all you guys. Go Giants. We will catch you next week.